Hello YouTube, this is Omid here, bringing you another Wargame European Archives. Okay, so in this episode we will be covering the Logistic, Recon and Support vehicles of NATO. Starting with Logistic, as before. Okay, now, compared to PAC, NATO has a wide range of command vehicles that serve a wide variety of purposes, but we'll start off with the basic one that you start off first with, the M151A1 command vehicle. This is similar to the packed command keeps, where it's the cheapest of the command vehicles is only 200, and you can field the most of this vehicle compared to the other armored units of armored command units of NATO. Its speed isn't that good, but it can go very far, so this can reach pretty much any command zone in the map you want to cover and get you another one as well if you need some backup. Of course, however, that being a command vehicle, it's only got 5 health points and does not have any armor at all. So for that reason, I definitely wouldn't recommend this on most maps, just because you're spending 200 points on a unit that's going to die quite quickly and easily to even a random artillery volley striking in its vicinity. So overall, these I'd recommend for use solely in large maps, where you can sort of put these in sections that you might not have been able to capture if you use the other command vehicles because of their limited availability. Okay, but let's move on to them. So, the next step is the unarmed command armor. This takes the form of the US M577, the West German M577 Key, and these are only 2 versions available. They both cost 200 points and they're identical in every way. 220 points. And yeah, so they go faster than the basic command vehicle, and they've got level 1 armor on all sides, apart from the front, which gets 2. However, the range is lower. So, but generally command vehicles aren't moving around too much, so this shouldn't be a problem on most maps. The disadvantage of these units is you can only field 2 of them per match, which means that on larger maps using these you can run out quite quickly, and that might make it hard to capture because you might have to choose which to capture and which to leave empty, which can be annoying. However, these are good and solid units. 220 is a fair price to pay for this kind of armor and its command vehicle. Then we move on to the armed and armoured command vehicles, which NATO has quite a lot of. The British FV-105 Sultan, the US M114A1, and the French VAB PC. Now, these differ quite a bit, so let's start off with the French one. It's quite expensive at 240, but it's incredibly fast at 90 kilometers an hour. This is quite useful as a command vehicle, as sometimes you might have to evacuate it in an emergency. Also, it has an excellent operational range, and it's a very maneuverable unit. You'll be able to move it from command point to command point as the battle's conditions change, so it's a very good maneuver warfare unit. It also has the general an M2 Brown on it to defend itself, although this generally won't save it too much, because if the enemy is attacking it, they'll probably field something that this won't be able to hold off. However, any armament is good armament. It also has 2,000 rounds, so you won't need to supply it in any situation, really. The disadvantage, however, is that it only has 1 armor in the front, nothing anywhere else, so this can still be quite vulnerable to attack and artillery barrages. It's quite a dangerous unit to use if you're not planning to use its maneuverability. The other ones would be recommended. So we'll move on to the M114A1. So this is actually cost the same as the unarmed command vehicles, but comes with the HMQ Brown, similar to the French VAB PC. However, as we can see when we compare it to the 2, it is distinctly worse. It is slower. Its optics, I think they're the same. Yeah, they're the same. However, its operational range is lower, so this thing might struggle to get to everywhere on the map at once. Overall, I wouldn't recommend it over the other 2, because you're sacrificing armor and range for the machine gun, and I wouldn't. That's not a sacrifice I'd make. I'd stick with armoured because these things cost a lot. You want to keep these safe. And then the British is a sort of compromise between the M114A1 and the VAB PC. It's got its own British general purpose machine gun. I don't think it doesn't have the same kind of range, but so it's got a shorter range, but it's got more firepower, which could make a difference. However, I don't think it would be wise to count on this because it's a 701 meter range. That's the same kind of range as RPGs. So if by the time it started to shoot at stuff, they're probably already planning to take it out. It's got 80 speed, which is quite good, but it has a pretty short range considering that kind of speed. Optics are normal, but still you'd want to have a recon with it to identify the problem. So this thing could run away from most threats because Warsaw Pact units tend to be slow. And again, front one, side one, so it's more armoured than the VAB PC. However, it's slower. So this would be a decent compromise, I'd say. But overall, I'd recommend using just the dedicated armoured command vehicles because you're only paying for what you'll most likely need. Then there's also the command helicopter, the UH-1A, because it's a helicopter. Obviously, it's got no armor, but it is very fast. So again, if you can give it time to take off before the enemy gets into range, this can get out of a situation much more easily than the VAB can. However, its operational range is only 300 kilometers, and that doesn't seem that good for a helicopter. So this could that's the thing. So while this would be good for a sort of an initial attack at one of the enemy's deployment zones in their rear, capturing it before they get the opportunity to, its poor operational range means that if you're using this for maneuver warfare, you're going to have to supply it a bit, and that could be annoying. Speaking of supplies, let's move on to the supplies. As again, the standard FOB that we discussed in the Warsaw Pact version, it's the same kind of idea. It's just got the stars and stripes fluttering from it. So you can only build these at the start of the game, but they're the best bang for your buck in terms of supplies. For supply trucks, for basic ones, we've got the MD Jupiter supply truck, 15.750 liters, quite slow, and won't be able to see a threat to it, and it's quite vulnerable. So overall, not that recommendable. Then you go for armored. So this costs twice as much as the MK Jupiter, but delivers twice the supplies, so you're still getting the same amount of supplies for your buck, but it's a bit faster, and it has armor and more health points. So yeah, overall this would be a good. So I definitely recommend the Hemet over the Jupiter. I think the advantage that the Jupiter has is that you can field a lot more of them than the Hemet. I think the Hemets are limited to 8. Trucks per game. I think the Jupiter has I think 16. So Jupiters you can bring them in a lot more, but the Hemets can carry more and are faster. They carry the same amount of supplies for the buck, as I keep saying. So but then NATO has a wide. Those are actually the only trucks that NATO has. It's a bit surprising, but they have a good range of supply helicopters. Well, let's start off with the French Puma. This is a very interesting supply helicopter. It only carries 1,000 liters of supplies. At 40, that's not that good. I mean, the Hemet, costs 10 less and carries 500 more. So this is a very inefficient way of carrying supplies. But its advantage is its speed. At 325 kilometers an hour, this is an amazingly fast supply helicopter. Very good for delivering emergency supplies for your units. They might, it's a case where they need it now rather than quite a bit later. Quite a specialist role, but I think the low capacity would probably, that's what would put me off it. Then we got the Canuck. This costs 60. So it's, it carries the same amount as a Hemet, but it's cost twice as much, but it's very fast. And then the Super Canuck, which carries an extra 500 more, but costs an extra 15 more. So I don't think that's a good deal. I mean, you're paying like an extra Jupiter for it, but it's only carrying 500 rather than 720. So overall, and you're not getting any speed boost. So overall, I'd probably go for the Canuck as my supply helicopter, just because it's probably the most efficient supply carrier that NATO has. But overall, I'd still recommend a combination of HEMTs and Cubiters for your supply needs. Okay, let's move on to the Recon. NATO has a wide variety of Recon. You're spoiled for choice, really. So let's start off with the ERC 90 again. This is a French Recon. It's quite a nice little unit. Its advantage is it's 95, so it has no problem keeping up with any NATO advance. Disadvantage is the basic version only has good optics. I think if you upgrade, you get some very good optics. Its range is good, so it won't be too thirsty on supplies. Its guns and its machine gun are sort of decent. You know, they're not, the basic version won't be doing too much fighting, hopefully. And at 45 it is quite expensive, but what you're paying for basically is its speed and its, you know, its range. This is a very good deep penetration scouting vehicle that can also deal a bit of damage to light defenses. Pay a bit more and you get the AMX 10RK. Now this is actually this is a more heavily armored. Its gun is a much better one. It has 10 more rounds in it and it's more accurate and more powerful in terms of armor piercing power, and its machine gun gets twice as much bullets, so this is a very self-sustaining unit. However, its speed does drop, so this is a slower vehicle, although it does have more armor and very good optics. And I think its fuel tank gets a bit of a boost. Yep, this fuel tank is increased, so this is an even better deep penetration unit. It depends what you want. The basic version is fast, but the higher priced version has a lot more firepower and can go further, but it's slower, so it just depends what you're going to go for. Then we've got the Scorpion. This is the British version. It's quite fast at 70. It's got good optics and a decent range. It's got a decent level of armor, front one, side one. You know, Recon units tend to not be heavily armored, and it's got a basic gun. So this is a sort of bog standard Recon unit. One that you'd just use it to, you know, it's got the Recon. You know, it's decent, but it's cheap. Upgrade to the Scimitar, you pay 5 more, and the main gun is turned into an autocannon now. This is the thing, okay? The autocannon, its range is reduced, and it actually doesn't look like too good of an autocannon. So basically, this one has less firepower, but its stabilizer is improved. I don't know. I can't really see if you'd want the Scimitar over the Scorpion. It seems to be like disadvantage after disadvantage. I'd probably say the advantage of the Scimitar over the Scorpion is the autocannon's more of a multi-purpose weapon than a gun. The gun can only really is effective against ground units, whereas the autocannon can deal with helicopters quite well. Although it's got low accuracy and a very bad HE part, so I wouldn't recommend the Scimitar. Go for the Scorpion. Then we've got an even more bog standard Recon with the American M113 ACAV. Good optics, bad range. It's got a good sort of one everywhere armor, so it can take a few hits. It's also got quite a good armament. It's got a Browning and then 2 M60 machine guns with a lot of ammunition in it. So 3 machine guns. This could do a lot of damage to helicopters that get too close to it, and this would probably tear up infantry very nicely. However, I think one of the bad things is that this is a very slow Recon at only 40 kilometers an hour. Unless you're using this as a sort of static position or as an outpost Recon, which it's, you know, at 30 points it'll do a very nice job. It's not going to do that well because it's too slow to keep up with the rest of your forces. NATO is a fast nation, and this would probably just kill the advantage you have. Also, it's only got good optics, so it's not that good as a stationary Recon. Then we've got the M114A2. It's got the autocannon, looks like the same as the Scimitar. Yeah, it's similar to the Scimitar, but it's less accurate. This goes 50 kilometers an hour. I don't know, I can't really see that. This is another Recon that doesn't look too good. It's too slow. You really need something that has at least 70 to be a good Recon for NATO, I'd say. I don't know. I'd say the probably best thing about this is you'd use this as a sort of basic recon that you can post to make sure you're not being flanked. So basically, you'd use this would be good at dealing with helicopter threats when they're directly on top of it. This one has a wider range, because you see, the Browning might have a range of 1200 meters, but the M60s only have a range of 700. So, and this is an autocannon that has a 1500 meters. So this would be better at dealing with helicopters, but I wouldn't recommend it personally. Then you've got the Keep Recon at 30. This is quite fast. It's got very good optics and it's got a good range. And then if you upgrade it, you get 2 machine guns, but it's slower. But I think you still have this same kind of range. So basically, this is a sort of fast and recon that you can use for scouting, maybe deep penetration if you're not really considering an attack. But I'd probably go for the French recon if you're penetrating. And this is just a sort of a recon that uses a good backup, I'd say. Very fast. So if you think so, you might want to use this at the start of a match. Send it out to see what the enemy's throwing at you. Because if you can micromanage it well enough, it'll probably escape from most threats. Because 80 kilometers an hour is very fast. I wouldn't really recommend this when you're paying 10 extra and it's going slower. And you see, that's the thing. If the recon only has this, it only has 0 armor, and this is probably only 5 health points because it's a keep. I wouldn't really pay extra for any armor it's carrying, because it's probably going to get killed by anything before it can really use that. Well, the Brown might be good against infantry, but overall I wouldn't recommend using this. I'd probably just stick with the Mutt. Then you've got the M3 Bradley CFE. Now this is a very good recon. It's quite expensive at 75, but it's got armor. It's fully armored. 65. It might be a bit too slow for your recon needs, but it's got a very good optics, so this is quite good. It's definitely going to help you out. Its range doesn't look to be that good, but what sells is its armament. It's got the Bushmaster autocannon, which has an excellent range. It's quite accurate, so it'll definitely hit the helicopters, and autocannons are very nasty against helicopters. This would take out anything that gets too close to it very easily. And it's carrying an 8 ATKM, the Salkus, and now this is a pretty good ATKM. 8 accuracy and 12 power, so this is going to put a dent in quite a lot of stuff. It carries a good amount of ammunition, so this can keep firing for a while. And the ranges, which should be good enough to deal with most stuff. Of course, the danger, of course, is that packed tanks usually carry their own ATKM, so this could be a worry, seeing as you're paying for quite a lot. But overall, this is a very good recon to use with your main army, just because it packs a huge amount of punch, and it's armored enough to take care of itself against minor threats. On an extra 5 points, and you get the Ito ATKM. This is a bit more accurate and a bit more powerful. This would definitely be a worry for most tanks. I think that's the only difference. Yeah, you're basically paying a bit more for a nasty ATKM. At 5 points for that kind of firepower, I'd probably go for that. But the basic Bradley is a very good vehicle. This is just a bit better. Then you've got this the German Kurz. It's got the same kind of auto cannon that this one has. In fact, they look like they're pretty much the same. Let's see. Kurz is a bit cheaper, but it doesn't look. But that's because it's less armored. Yeah, it's less armored. So basically, this is the M114A2 that's less armored, but it's cheaper. So I don't know. I'd probably prefer this over the M114A2 as a sort of outpost with an autocannon to deal with any helicopters that get a bit too close. Then you've got the Lux. Now this is a very nice recon, because it's got this RH202 autocannon, which is a very, very deadly unit against helicopters. I speak from experience. This is any helicopter that gets too close to this can easily get stunned and taken down. It's also got 85 kilometers an hour, so it can chase after helicopters. Front and side armor, decent. and it's got a good enough range and optics. It's also got a machine gun to help against infantry, but I wouldn't be concerned about that too much. And then if you upgrade to the Luke's AI, you get more accuracy and a bit of an upgrade in optics and stabilizer. So yeah, the Luke's AI is quite a dangerous recon unit, but it's quite expensive as well. Again, this could be quite good as a sort of hunter killer, like deep penetration recon unit, but they're similar to the French Urk, I'd say again. But the trouble is it costs a bit too much. 50 and 60 seems quite a lot for a unit that could very easily die to an enemy defensive line. But still, it's got a good amount of power. This is probably the best recon to use as a side force. Then we've got the V150. So let's have a look at this. It's got twin machine guns. However, their range isn't that good. They might have a lot of ammunition, but I don't know, infantry could easily take this out. However, it's very fast, so we could definitely outrun infantry. So this seems quite nimble. Let's see, if we upgrade it, you can get an autocannon for an extra 5, a main gun and a machine gun for another 5, and then a better main gun, but with less ammo for another 5. So yeah, this is another, looks like another standard recon unit. It looks quite a lot of that version, but anyway, so this is a sort of fast recon, and you can pay a bit extra to give it some bite. Okay, now let's move on to the recon helicopters. NATO has quite a lot of these. So we got the Bo 105CB. So a sort of standard helicopter here, fairly fast. So it's good for probing. Very good optics, that'll definitely spot stuff easily. Its range isn't that good though, could be a worry compared to other helicopters. And 65 is quite cheap for a helicopter. Then we got the British Gazelle. Now this is definitely one of the pride of NATO recon helicopters. At 80, it's quite expensive, but it's got exceptional optics, so it can spot stuff very far away. And at 350 kilometers an hour, this is pretty much the fastest unit in the game. Nothing can catch this. Definitely nothing that Pact can field. So yeah, this is definitely a very good sort of. This would be an excellent sort of start of the game to fly it into the center of the map to see what Pact send in your way, so you can field some stuff to deal with it. And for an extra 10 points, you get some rocket pods. Looks like some basic rocket pods. Don't look like they're too good. I wouldn't really recommend the rocket pods on this. This is, I guess, I'd sort of, because it might make you think it's better than it is. This is basically a sort of delicate helicopter, but it can spot a lot and it's very fast. That's what I'd say about it. US recon helicopters. Let's see. This is fairly fast and it's got quite good optics. It's also got a minigun. Now miniguns are very good on helicopter and helicopter combat, and Pact generally don't have too good guns on their helicopters, so this could definitely scare away the initial Pact recon helicopters that might be also coming your way, and even most Hinds would be scared away by this. Pay a bit more, you get some you get a Browning, so it's not as good against helicopters, but it's got some rocket pods similar to the Gazelle. Also, it gets an upgrade to exceptional optics, so you're paying a bit more for some good optics, and then you upgrade a bit more, and you get these 80 km Hellfires. Now these are this is pretty much the best 80 km that NATO has to offer. The full 80 km range, 10 accuracy, 16 power. This will just annihilate enemy tanks. Keeps the exceptional optics and the good speed. Range isn't affected. Also, these Hellfires, if I remember correctly, are fire and forget. So as long as the missile is launched, even if the helicopter itself is destroyed, these missiles will still hit. If they're going to hit, they might still miss, but with an accuracy 10, that's unlikely. So overall, the Kiowa helicopter is quite expensive, but it can deliver quite a good. It's a sort of compromise between a gunship and a recon helicopter. It's got quite a bit of firepower, but it's still a recon helicopter, although its health's probably a bit low. So, and at 140 for this, I wouldn't really recommend the Hellfire version, just because 140s gets too much to be gambling on a unit with such a low amount of health. Especially as most packed AA missiles will be able to outrange the Hellfire. And that covers Recon, so we'll move on to support. So we'll start off with AA. So we'll start off with the Roland. Okay, now the Roland is quite a... The Roland AA, it's got a range of 2,801, so it can outrange the basic helicopters that don't have 80 GMs equipped. Its accuracy is 8, so it'll generally hit the target, and it's got a good amount of missiles at 10. That's quite good. It's not that fast, and it's got a bit of armor. I think it's got the same kind of armor as a Tunguska, but its optics are poor, so it's definitely going to need recon if it's going to take advantage of its Roland missiles. Then you upgrade it, and you get higher accuracy and higher damage, and then I'm guessing a speed upgrade here. Yep, you get 2 front and sides, and 1 everywhere else, and an upgrade in speed. However, a decrease in range, so this is less maneuverable, and the missiles stay the same. Overall, the Roland, I'd probably use this as a sort of secondary line AA missile. I wouldn't use it in the main line, just because AA missiles, the main point of them is they can outrange the helicopters. They can hit the helicopters before the helicopters can start firing at them. And the 2,801 meters can be equaled by packed helicopters. So if they fly in some key pines that you take out, and then they attack you with their havocs behind this, it's too risky. These are good for dealing with the keep kind of AA or airborne infantry, nothing else. Now we've got the Flak Panzer. This is a very, this is a sort of general purpose AA. It's 15, so don't expect much. It's twin autocannon. Its range quite good for the price, but this won't be taking down any gunships anytime soon. Its speed isn't that good, and its range is woeful by the looks of it. So this is probably a sort of static AA that you sort of drive into the woods as a nasty little ambush unit that you can spread around the place thanks to its low cost. Upgrading to the 40 unit, you get an upgrade in speed and operational range, so this can go further than the basic Flak Panzer. Also, its gun is more accurate and has a better range. So you can consider this as a main force AA. And then you upgrade to the A1, and it gets a big boost in accuracy to 7. And the stabilizer is normal, so it's more accurate on the move. Of the 3, I'd probably take the Flak Panzer A1. It's only 10 more, but it's got a decent accuracy. I don't know. Either of the Gepards, it's not. I couldn't really choose between them. I'd probably go for the basic Gepard, really thinking about it, because this kind of artillery tends to be accurate anyway when it gets into range. Not the basic one, I wouldn't pick that. However, you get it when you start off as NATO, so that you might be using this a bit in the early games. Let's go through the artillery. Okay, so here's the Vulcan. Now this is sort of like the American counterpart to the Flak Panzer. You start off with just a Gatling gun, so same kind of thing. Decent range, a fair amount of ammo, but it's not maneuverable at all. Bit of an upgrade, and you get some more maneuverability and range. Upgrade some more, and you get a boost in accuracy. Wouldn't use this personally. I'd probably go for the Flak Panzers. And then the final NATO unit, the Chaparral. Now this is a very dedicated A. It's got a 3,500 meter range, same as a Tunguska. However, it only has 4 missiles, and its accuracy is 3. So here's a lesson. Okay, with a Chaparral, you have to give it as much veterancy as you can afford. Ideally, just give it full veterancy, because if you get sent out into the field, by the time it fires all 4 missiles, it won't have hit anything. Its accuracy is too low. Its damage is decent enough. It'll usually one-shots. The key-packed helicopters only have 5 health, but for the 10 health, you're going to need to upgrade to the second version, which is what I use for my main NATO defense, the M8A1 Chaparral. Also, just the Chaparral is very slow, and can't fire on the move, so just something to be aware of. So the Advanced Chaparral has a full 4,200 meter range, best of any AA in the game, and equal to the packed bucks. Accuracy, slight increase to 4, and damage a slight increase to 7. Again, always give this as much veterancy as you can. Get the pros using this because they're the only ones who'll be able to make it work. Okay, now we go to artillery. NATO has a lot of this. Let's start off with the French Ox F1. It's quite an interesting artillery. It's got good accuracy, and it's got a sort of and it's got a gun and a machine gun to defend itself. That's the thing. Quite a lot of artillery is defenseless if something else gets into range of it. This thing can fend for itself for a bit, although the low ammo means that without supplies this won't be able to fight for very long. But then again, it's artillery, and you'll always be supplying it. You know, average speed and a good armor, so this could fare quite well in counter battery fire because it can take the hits. And the gun itself, its range isn't that good, so it'll probably have to be quite close to the front lines to get some good accuracy in it. But overall, this is a sort of a fairly, you know, it's an all-rounder kind of artillery unit, I'd say. Let's see, then we got this British version. So this, again, this is only 40, so it's quite cheap for a full-on artillery unit. It's got a gun to defend itself, but with only 6 rounds, this is going to have a hard time defending itself against an attack. So the artillery's got fairly good range, and accuracy's, you know, not good. This seems to be a sort of keeping careful, spammable artillery unit. I wouldn't use this too much. I prefer the artillery to be accurate rather than just spamming it with this kind of stuff. Then we got the sort of, I think this is the same kind of thing with America. So, you know, a decent but not that good artillery unit. A machine gun to defend itself, but I really wouldn't count that as worth anything. Slow, not as much armor as the other units, but then again, it's cheaper, so you wouldn't expect it. Again, you wouldn't. This is just a basic artillery. Let's upgrade it a bit. So we've got a bit boost in accuracy, so that's quite good, and nearly a doubling in range. So that's very nice. Anything, and a bit faster as well. So that's it for an extra 15 points, and then for an extra 30. Ooh, you get a massive upgrade. So you've got now about a 30,000 meter range, full 10 accuracy, and a gun to defend itself. Any speed. Yep, it's also got more armor in the rear and the top, and a 60 speed. So this, I'd probably go with this version of the two. That's, you know, the same as the British system. It's just keeping careful for artillery for me. This seems a bit too expensive. Yeah, actually, well, for 85 compared to the French one, I'd probably go for it. So yeah, the Paladin and this are both decent artillery guns, I'd say. Then we got this kind of dedicated artillery. So it's got a bit of armor. I'm not really sure what's going for it here. Its range isn't that good. Its ammunition is low. That's going to eat through the ammunition. Well, that's the thing. It's only got 8 rounds, so it can't fire for very long without needing resupplied. But then it only fires at 2 rounds a minute, so it's not going to consume much supplies just because it's going to fire so slowly. It does a lot of damage though. 7 for artillery shell. This packs a punch, but it can't fire it accurately. It's got no top armor or rear, so it could be dangerous. And if it gets hit again, I wouldn't go for this. It's also quite expensive at 65. Spend an extra 5 and you get a boost in accuracy and range, but a decrease in operational range. Oh yeah, I wouldn't use this personally. Well, this is basically, it packs a huge amount of damage for its price. The other artillery, as you can see here, see, it only has kind of 5, even though it costs 104. So this has got quite a lot of damage, but it's quite fragile and inaccurate. Looks like it's the same kind of thing for the British. Is there any difference between them? Nope, they're clones of each other, and these two clones of each other. So yeah, here's the British version of that. Exactly the same. I don't know, it's probably just national pride, which one you'd go for. Then the mortar carriers. Now these are a very nice unit that I use quite a lot, okay? So they're 20s, they're keep. They carry a lot of ammunition, so you generally don't need to supply them that much. The range is, as an artillery, it's awful, but they're mortars, so what do you expect? Now, they actually might look bad, but because the range is so low, there's not a lot of room for error. So these guys can fire quite tight, and you can buy quite a lot of them because they're keep. However, they're slow, and if they get hit, they're probably going to die. Then if you upgrade them, you get a decrease in ammunition, but a slight increase in accuracy and range. So they're going to do a bit more damage until they run out of ammunition. And they still have 88 rounds, which isn't too bad. And then, so that's for an extra 15, and then for an extra 10, you get a speed and range increase. I'd probably just stick with the basic mortar. I think the main advantage of this is you don't need anything with them. You can just put them a bit behind your lines, or hammer out a defensive line that's in a secondary part of the map. So you bring these in, $80 will get you 4 of them. You start pounding the enemy with artillery. They think you're attacking there, and you queue away with their defenses on that part of the map, and that means they'll focus more on that part and ignore your main attack if it comes somewhere else. These are just too expensive, but if you lose these are good. These are decent backups. Then you've got the final one. Actually, no, we got the German artillery. Again, this looks like the same kind of thing. So it's got the MG3. Don't rely on that for anything. AG power 5, accuracy 5, slow. So yeah, this is sort of another basic artillery gun. I don't know. I really in a battle wouldn't be able to tell these kind of units apart. They're just too inaccurate for my liking. Then you've got the American MRS. This is their only rocket launcher. It's quite a good one. It's got a good range of 4,200 meters. Accuracy is quite good, so it can fire quite tight. Definitely, usually fires tighter than the packed artillery. It only has 12 rounds though, so every after one volley, it's out. And its damage is quite good. However, it's quite slow and fragile for something that costs 125, so another dedicated artillery unit. I'd probably use these as a sort of unit to sort of cause panic on a tight-knitted group. If Pac's using some T-80s or something quite high powerful that you don't want them to be using in the battle, you can fire off some of these and take off clusters of ATKM units or stun some tanks. Okay, I think that'll do it for this episode. Next time we'll be covering the vehicles of NATO and the helicopters. Until then, thank you and goodbye.